thank you for joining us. This is another Will and Warren's Wild Wine Reviews, or Warren and Will's Wild Wine Review. It's www, any way you look at it. Tonight, well, let's introduce ourselves. I'm Warren. I've had almost 2,100 reviews now at Vivino.
Damn. I'm Will. I'm a certified sommelier through the Court of Master Sommeliers.
Which is way more impressive.
I don't know. That's pretty darn impressive.
That's just anybody with money and a tongue can do
Yep.
it. All right.
I got the one.
Yeah. So thank you for joining us. Tonight's wine, the one we're doing, it's another white. We're doing a lot of whites.
Yeah.
So let me give you the information that we have.
Should I
on
hold the
this
bottle
one
so
to
the
start
live
with.
people can see it?
Yeah. You can hold it up to where they can see it. This is called Chabot Royale Story. It's a non-varietal, and it's from Ukraine. And we picked it up because of the obvious unpleasantness in Ukraine, and thought we would support the Ukrainians by talking
awesome.
about their wines. Now, I'll go where I usually start with, which is with Vivino stats, and that says that this wine has not been rated, which is a little weird because when you click through, you can see like 24 reviews, and I took the time to actually add all the reviews together and do the math. The average rating is 3.9.
Okay.
Now, the cost of a bottle is $12. This is an inexpensive bottle. I think I paid 16 or 17 bucks for it because I was on vacation and I saw it somewhere. I'm like, oh, we got to do Ukrainian wine.
Yeah.
So I picked it up, and it was a beach side town with your typical overpriced wine shop.
Yeah.
So, and typical overselling how good their overpriced wines are or
Right.
are not. So that's where we are on there. It is a non-varietal. It has no, which means it doesn't tell you what year it is, and that always, or should mean, I don't know about coming from the Ukraine.
Yeah.
But you put a year on it for the year the berries were picked, unless you're using two berries that were picked in different years,
Right.
two grapes. And this one has two different grape varietals in it, and my guess is that those were picked on different years, and thus we don't have a year on the bottle.
Right.
Now, the vineyard is located in the south coast of the Black Sea of Odessa, Ukraine. And I checked to see what kind of shape they would be in since, there is a war going on there. The Russians did attack Odessa. They came in by the sea and started firing with their gunboats. And then the Ukrainians returned fire
And they sunk a ship,
with
right?
their, I don't know if that was when that happened, but with their NATO equipment and which is a whole lot, but they're better trained and have better weapons than the Russians. So the Russians were turned tail and ran away, and Odessa was not captured. There was some damage to the port area, but the vineyard is outside of the city, and it was undamaged as far as I can tell.
Right.
Now, let's see. Chabot Wine Cultural Center, and they make a big deal out of this. It's the only tourist complex in Ukraine at a working winery.
That's cool.
Yeah, but I mean,
That's neat.
Yeah, and it's a big country, so I guess that means something.
Yeah.
It has tens of thousands of visitors each year, and it's also a European cultural heritage site. It was founded in 2003, and I have no idea how to pronounce It's I-U-K-U-R-I-D-Z-E family. And they put it on. They purchased a historic winery thought to be the oldest in the country. And what I could find out about is it looks like some Swiss vintners whose names, as far as I can tell, have been lost in the mists of time.
Yeah.
Opened it, created it, planted all the first growing of grapes in the 1800s. So Swiss vintners.
Okay.
And I've had some okay Swiss wines. I've never had a great Swiss wine, but I've had some good ones. Maybe it's probably because they don't let the great ones out of the country. I'd never had a great Malta wine until I went to Malta, and then I didn't have. Half the wines were great Malta wines. So I'm guessing that that's probably where we're at.
Yeah.
Let's see. It's 10.8 ABV.
Yeah.
So without further ado, Will and I are going to. Neither of us have had this before. I'm not a white drinker, so.
I've had Arcadzatelli, which is one of the grapes that's in this before. But as Warren mentioned, this is not a varietal wine. They don't put the grapes on the label, but they do mention them on the back, and they say they made it out of Arcadzatelli, which is a grape native to Georgia, and Aligote, which I believe is a grape that's native to Spain. So kind of an interesting.
This is the information I will never be able to share with you, and that's why Will's here.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's
spicy.
A little bit of diesel.
Yeah, Arcadzatelli has some kind of similarities to Gewürztraminer. So like kind of floral, spicy.
But it's much more.
And also like you mentioned the diesel.
Cantaloupe. Not just melon, but specifically cantaloupe.
I can definitely see that. Almost like a sort of waxy, rindy kind of.
Yeah, there's wax in there for sure too.
Almost like a besides the diesel, like almost like a smoky undertone.
And there's something a little astringent
Mm-hmm.
in there, which is not something I really want on the nose, but it's there. I mean, it's not horrible, but it's there.
Oh yeah, this isn't as sweet as I thought it was going to be. So it's listed as a semi-sweet wine, and I realize we're kind of splitting hairs here, but I'd call this more off-dry. This is in that, but it's in between. I would guess it's barely above 1% residual sugar.
Hey, Joanne.
Not super sweet.
From home.
Okay. Not super sweet. Definitely not dry. But this would be great with we often talk about how sweeter wines go well with spicier foods. If you're having like a mild to medium spicy dish, this would go really nicely with it. If you're having something kind of salty, the sweetness would be a good counterpoint to it, though you might drink a little too much of it.
Now I'm getting green apple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
There's some other fruit that I'm feeling.
You know what this is reminding me a little bit of is we did that really old Riesling.
Oh, the old Riesling.
The old Riesling that had the yellow apple kind of flavor, and this has some of that, like that yellow delicious kind of feel to it.
The 95 we did just a week or two ago. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not comparing it quality-wise. I'm just saying in terms of the.
There really isn't a comparison.
No, there isn't.
Quality-wise. I mean, for $12, you're not getting ripped off.
No, not at all.
If you like, if you like some of the sweeter white wines, and by that, what I mean is not white wines that are sweet,
right? But
that aren't sweet, but are a bit sweeter than
normal. Yeah.
Then this is kind of what you got.
Yeah, and it's interesting because too much sweetness in a wine can destroy its complexity. And what's nice about this is because it's 10.8% alcohol by volume. You know that no sugar was added to it. That they just fermented it to a certain point and then stopped the fermentation. So it has a lot of the natural Arcatatelli flavors in there.
You must remember.
Oh right, keep ourselves honest. Yeah.
Yes, we probably won't go the whole time, but because I'm not sure how much I've got to say about a white that's not really in any of my ballparks, wheelhouses.
Well, we can give it a little bit to see if
with it. I would certainly, if somebody handed it to me at a party, I wouldn't be looking for a way to dump it out. I would absolutely drink it. But again, that's not a measure of the wine.
Right.
That's the measure of me being a red drinker and not a white drinker. Because I would prefer this over most of the Pinot Grigios anyone's ever handed me. Probably half the Rieslings. Not Rieslings. Not Rieslings, no.
Well, it depends on the Rieslings.
Well, half of the California Rieslings. Right. And half the Chardonnays. I mean, it wouldn't stand up to Pouilly-Fuissé. What
was that? You had one of those garden variety Rieslings one time, and I remember it really disappointed you because it was one of the ones that came in the blue bottle. It's like Schmidt and Sohn or something like that. Dude. But I just remember seeing your review, and it was like you and I hadn't talked about it, but I could tell that like in your head you're like, okay, this is gonna be kind of like an entry level. No, it's not. It's a $9 Riesling from Food Lion, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Kind of two dimensional. Yeah.
And I stay away from California Rieslings. I stay away from Australian Rieslings. I like German Rieslings and French Rieslings, and I prefer them to be 10 years old.
The only California Rieslings that I have found that I thought were interesting were from much cooler climate coast, when I say coast,
I think you could get one from Washington or Oregon. I just haven't run into one that I was happy with yet.
Right.
And by the way, don't age this.
Oh no,
this
not
needs
at all.
To be, when you buy it, open it.
Absolutely.
I mean, you don't want to have it too long because I can already tell this will not last 5 to 10 years. It will, but you won't be happy with it.
Another little interesting note about the lack of vintage on the label is that a lot of wineries, especially if they're making this same label every year, it saves them a lot of money if they don't put a vintage date on it. And so what they'll usually do is they'll just roll out the next year's batch. And like when I worked at Chateau, for instance, we had a really, really good batch of Our Dog Blue that was made predominantly with Washington Riesling. Yeah. The acidity was super high, and they actually...
I didn't know it was a Riesling, but I enjoyed it. But back then I drank a lot more whites and a lot more sweet wines. That was like 15 years ago, and my wife introduced me to their sweet wines.
Right.
And I didn't hate them because I wasn't a wine guy yet.
Well, and the thing about Our Dog Blue from Chateau is that it's generally 2% sugar, and it's usually, because if they're using Virginia or North Carolina Riesling, the acidity is usually lower. Well, this was Washington Riesling, the acidity was higher, and the sugar content ended up being lower. And I would tell people, it was whatever that year's bottling was. So it was a non-vintage. Yeah. But I was like, this is the 2011, 2012 bottling.
Right.
And I would actually show them the code on the box because I'd worked on the bottling line a few times and knew what the
We know this was bottled in 2019.
Yeah.
But that's all that we know. Because the bottling isn't anything. Our next wine that we're going to do is a Rioja.
Right.
That spent 5 years in oak after after it was bottled. But the year on the label is the year it was picked.
I mean,
it's at harvest.
If this is 2019 bottling, chances are very good it was picked in 2018.
Yep, that's my guess.
And the thing
maybe
is,
27, something was kicking around from 2017.
This could be a pure vintage.
As you said,
and they just didn't change the label. Yep. I mean, that's one of the. What I asked them one time, I was like, some of these R-Dog Blues are pretty darn good, or every so often you guys release a Black Dog. It's like, why don't you put vintage is on the label? And they said, simple, saves money. We can just order 100,000 R-Dog Blue labels and not have to worry about ever ordering them again for years or whatever.
As a print professional, I completely understand that.
Yep.
Used to do magazines, and if there was I remember we used a wrap around our magazines,
yep.
and I just did a generic one so it could go with all 10 of the magazines I owned at the time.
Right.
And by wrap, what I mean is it was a cardstock cover that we would actually have bound into the magazine, and then we could just ship it by just slamming the label down, and we didn't have to buy envelopes. And if you get enough of those for 2 years worth of 10 national magazines, it's a lot cheaper than an envelope, no matter how many envelopes you buy. And then people can just peel them off, the cardboard off, and you got your magazine. The way it looks in the store.
Right.
And I mean, saved it from having any damage. There was just a little thing on the end of it that kept it from opening in the mail, and it worked perfectly.
By and large, the non-vintage stuff in Virginia that you run, I mean, every so often you run across one, especially with reds. If you have like a 2020 Cab Franc and a 2019 Cabernet Sauvignon, and you blend them together, then that's one of the reasons that the non-vintage is there. But with a white one, by and large, with white wines, nobody's hanging on to a tank full. Nobody's hanging on to a tank full.
Why would you put the year on it? Nobody's gonna.
Yeah.
I wish that we could turn this around without a huge production, because we have the most amazing sunset going on right now, and anybody in Floyd.
I was gonna say
some
of our Floyd friends who are watching might be looking at it right now.
This is not as sweet. Just even a little while after opening it. I mean, it's still not a.
The acidity is pretty darn high. And also, if it's 10.8% alcohol, I mean, we're probably talking like maybe 1.5% sugar.
Apple pie. Apple pie. It's not just apple, it's apple pie.
But like a tart apple pie.
Yeah, tart apple pie.
Like a Granny
quite
Smith.
enough sugar in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or one of those good, I don't know if it's tart.
I know I'm hallucinating it. I can almost taste cinnamon. There's no cinnamon in there. There's no cinnamon in there. But yeah, for $12, you're getting a pretty good deal on this wine.
And also, I mean, it's just one of those things. Our Cacciatelli isn't all that well known, but it is the signature grape of Georgia, and it's widely planted throughout Eastern Europe. So if you're interested in sampling it and interested in expanding your grape horizons, this is one of those ones that, although it's not well known in the U.S., it's by no means obscure. Oddly enough,
you can buy it. There was all kinds of places where you could buy it.
I don't know if it's planted anywhere else in the U.S., but I can tell you one place in the U.S. it is planted, and that's right here in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, Dennis Horton, out at Horton Vineyards, planted some Cacciatelli, and he was actually the first experience I had with it. It was a really cool bottle.
I've had this.
He had gotten someone to paint the inside of the bottle with like a Ukrainian cathedral, and so the wine magnified it, made it kind of blow up.
I'm trying to remember. I know I've had some of this before, but I don't. They have many different. They have more than one varietal, so I don't remember. I had it at a tasting. It was years ago, and I remember going, "Oh, that's Ukrainian wine. Cool. I've had Ukrainian wine." I don't remember what I thought of it, other than it didn't blow my doors off.
Right.
Remember it, but again, I'm not the intended audience. I think the intended audience would rather like this.
Here's the thing. I would love to see your reaction to the Georgians in particular. I don't know if other Eastern European countries do this. I don't see why they wouldn't. Is they will take, there's a grape they grow called Saperavi, and when they make the wine out of it, after it's done fermentation, when the wine is completely dry and is just sitting there on the skins, they leave it on the skins for 6 weeks.
Oh my gosh,
and I
that would be very sweet.
No, I mean, the wine is basically opaque. It's a red wine.
It's a red wine.
It's a red wine.
Oh boy!
So the wine is bone dry. There's no sugar in it whatsoever. It's just sitting on the skins, and so it's just leaching all of those color chemicals out of the skins, all those leukocyanogens and anthocyanins.
I imagine you got a pretty good amount of tannins if you're doing that.
Well, and it's interesting because Saperavi is not. I mean, I think if you did a Saperavi the normal way, it would probably end up being kind of like that Blaufränkisch that we had, or maybe even a Pinot. I'm not really sure. And I think that's maybe part of the reason that they do it, because it's not super heavy. I mean, it's dense in terms of how it feels on your palate, but its tannins aren't like mouth-biting, like cheek-pulling. It's more like, it's like a really dense Grenache, but with no oak aging.
Which brings me to a thing. We said that when we found out we were wrong, we would correct ourselves.
Okay.
Shatter is Grenache.
Okay.
You were absolutely correct. I was wrong.
What did
I
you
had
think
it the other day. I thought it was Pinot Noir.
Okay.
I mean, it's a really light Grenache.
Yeah.
But
No,
I knew, I must have known what it was, and I asked, and I looked around, and they don't make a shatter Pinot Noir that I could find.
The reason that I was suggestible
my mistake, my bad. That was a memory thing, and I got it wrong.
Well, here's the thing. I have had Pinot Noir from the south of France that was, not similar to the shatter, but I was thinking, like, Warren could be right, because Grenache and Pinot Noir, Grenache is slightly heavier than Pinot Noir in terms of its overall body, but it's not a very tannic grape. Part of the reason that you like the Grenaches that you do is they've been put in oak.
Right, I was going to say they oak them. And
if you had an unoaked Grenache, I'm not sure. I'm sure you would like it.
There are plenty of Grenaches I have no use for.
Right.
I'm aware that just because it's Grenache does not mean I'm going to. But then again, just because it's an Napa Cab doesn't mean I'm going to like it.
Exactly.
You've got to be a good
But there is no
winemaker to
unoaked
make
Napa
me
Cab.
happy. Not if they have any brains in them.
Right. But there's plenty of unoaked Grenache.
I still laugh at the Bellamy Vineyards. Well, Mr. Bellamy's French, so he doesn't believe in oak. What?
Maybe they mean he doesn't believe in American oak.
Okay, but there's, do what really good wineries do and import.
Oh, no. I absolutely agree. I'm just saying,
just stop telling people that French don't use oak.
When I worked at Chateau Morissette, I went to the manager one time, and this kind of stuff bugged me because, if you tell someone that something was kept in oak for 6 months instead of 8 or 8 instead of 6, it's like, okay, like you misread the sheet, whatever. I'm not gonna. But one of the guys working in the tasting room told a customer that our Viognier was what did he say? He said Viognier is a light-bodied white grape. It's not. Viognier is one of the heaviest bodied. Now it's light compared to a red.
Well, once you get it in the glass, that's probably what he was talking about.
No, he said it's a light-bodied white wine. It's not. It's one of the heavier white wines that we made. He said it's fermented in French oak. It wasn't, and kept in oak for 8 months. It was. You can do that with Chardonnay.
Yeah.
And some people do it with Viognier. He wasn't wrong in that can be done with Viognier. I think he had it mixed up with the Chardonnay. And I went to the manager, I was like, we've got to get on some kind of standardized message. And I said, because the thing is, I'm not really nitpicking Jim so much as I am saying...
Right, but if somebody comes back and they pull something completely different...
Yeah, they're gonna be like, wait, what?
I had to bite my tongue one night in a restaurant. I may have mentioned this before, and I don't know why the hell I was in an Olive Garden. It's not the kind of place I normally eat. But, I ordered the best wine they had, which wasn't very good, but it was an okay Italian that they had. And these people said, I don't see a Pinot Noir on the they wanted a Pinot Noir. I don't see a Pinot Noir on your list. And he said, our Pinot Noir is a Cabernet Sauvignon. And I'm like, dude, you have 3 Italian wines that compare with the lightness and what people are looking for, and you're telling them to go with the big cab that you've got.
I just love the fact that
they loved it, by the way, and said, "Oh, it's the best Pinot we've ever had."
I just love that he thought that one of either Pinot Noir or Cabernet Sauvignon was a style of wine and not a varietal.
He may have just Pinot Noir, dark
right.
red. I don't know. I mean, I didn't ask him. I was just like, "Are you kidding?" And Angela's like poking me because I'm like trying to. I'm like, I gotta say something. That's craziness.
I mean, that's equivalent of saying our fish special tonight is steak.
Right. I mean, that's exactly what it is. Tonight our chicken is actually
shrimp.
or I mean, I suppose it's quail.
Yeah.
Tonight our chicken's quail. Yeah. It's like, well, it's a bird.
Yeah.
But
it's in the same middle category.
It's in the same genus. It's.
And that's the thing is that. For a lot of people, and this is the reason I want to give servers and people who work in tasting rooms the benefit of the doubt, if you're not super into this, it's overwhelming, and you're like, well, it's my job.
They only have 8 wines on their list, so it couldn't have been that overwhelming.
But what I mean is, like, how old was the guy? Like 20, 21, 22?
Yeah, probably.
That's the thing.
It's been a decade since that happened. I have to tell the story because it's just so stupid.
When I was training servers at Billy's in Roanoke, one of the things I remember is that they were really nice kids who were really eager to learn, and once I was getting them one-on-one or in small groups, they were picking it up really quickly. But the thing is they picking it up by osmosis. Like, if you have 5 tables and you're trying to pick up something about a wine, you might misremember to be playing a game of telephone with the bartender, just be not that you're stupid or misinformed. It's just you misheard something and you're not being given instruction on it.
Right.
And one of the things I told the managers, I was like, look, in order to be training your servers on wine, we need to be doing this at lineup when they can focus entirely on it without having to worry about having tables.
Most of the servers around here, if it's a newer wine they haven't had, they'll say, well, what do you think of it? And they'll actually write notes because they know that I can pick this stuff out. And then some of them will come back to me and say, oh, I was really happy that you told me when I asked you about the wine, because I told somebody this is what it is, and they drank it, and like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what it is. I was so happy with it. And I'm like, well, cool.
When I was working at Wine Lab, customers were asking me about like which charcuterie they could get, and I'd be telling them like, oh, you know, this tastes like that, and this is kind of similar to this. And one of them was joking with me. He's like, they give you free samples, and I was like, well, in order to make recommendations, he's like, that's a really good point. I didn't even think of that. And I was like, but yes, I also do get free samples.
You know, I mean, any number of restaurants I was in back before the Vivino ad. Now I don't. And people are like, oh, would you like some help with the wine list? I'm like, no. But back in the day, I'd be like, well, I don't know any of these wines. You know, I mean, I know the varietals and I know what I should be getting for this price, but that doesn't mean it's what I'm going to get.
No. So with your extensive catalog, do you think it's possible that you could ever walk into a restaurant here in like the U.S., say, and look at a list and find yourself being like, okay, I know most of these, but there's a few that I'm curious about that I don't know, or would you just be like, I'm going to go with one of the ones that I know?
You know, I mean, they'll bring in stuff, but generally they tend to be $3 wines. Right. So nobody would ever show them to, you know, I walk into Vintage Cellar, and I'm like, what do you got that's interesting? Well, you know, he shows me a 1998 Rioja. Right. And, you know, I came home with one that I got, and it was an inexpensive, I think, Petite, either Verdot or Petite Syrah, I don't remember which, and I bought it because of the name. Right. And the name was Smith Wooten with a M on it. Yeah. Which to me, you know, as a genre guy, I'm like, oh, Smith of Major Wooten, one of Tolkien's minor books that people wouldn't know, but I of course have read it several times. So I bought it because you know if somebody's going to put a Tolkien reference, the only thing that would get me faster is the last reference on their wine. I'm going to at least give them the $20 and try it. Yeah, that was a 2010.
It's always cool to see people do stuff like that.
And I got them just last week. You know, so you know people can get them. So I want to review them quickly because I don't know how long they'll stay on the market. But
one of the things, I mean, the reason I ask you that is that like I don't necessarily have your extensive knowledge of the upper end, but I will go to a wine bar or someplace and I'll be like, okay, I know that producer, or like, okay, I've had this wine, but I had prior vintages, and I'll look at it.
Now it's delicious apple.
Yeah, it's opening up.
No, I mean the varietal. Oh, delicious, not that it's delicious.
Yellow delicious.
Yellow, yeah. Now I'm tasting particular kinds of apple.
You know,
it was Granny Smith earlier, and now it's delicious.
I'm really glad that you're saying that, because as soon as I said yellow appleton, I was like, people are gonna think that I have been bitten by the autumn bug, and I'm just tasting yellow apple and everything, and I'm not. Or if I am, Warren is been bitten by the same bug.
I have not.
No, he hasn't. Warren is basically unsuggestible.
I would say so, yeah. I mean,
one of the reasons I always really liked tasting wine with you, especially early on, was that I never had to worry that, like, if I suggested something that you would suddenly start tasting it. It would be that you and I had this very innate ability to put our finger on things that the other was trying to put their finger on.
I'll happily say, no, man, I'm not tasting that. Don't smell it, don't taste it. But you know, there's the thing. Genetics play a part in this. You know, one of my buddies on Facebook, and I kept my mouth shut and didn't say anything, was going on about people who want to tell the cook how to cook it. Right. Because the cook has been trained, and I'm like, dude, you are so wrong on this one, it is not worth my time to explain to you the vagaries of taste buds and the fact that it's genetic. So if the cook, if you're trained professional chef is a super taster, then he doesn't know what 25% of all people are super tasters. Right. He can't know what 75% of his customers are tasting because they don't taste what he tastes under any circumstances. Right. It has nothing to do with his training. It has to do with his genetic disposition. And if he's not a super taster, he sure as hell shouldn't be telling the super tasters how to eat the food. Because I'm like, oh, so you want to serve me food with a lot of, what's the spice that tastes like dish soap?
Oh, cilantro.
Cilantro. And I should just accept that this is going to be good, despite the fact, now I don't, but I know people who do. I have the gene that makes it taste like dish soap. No, I don't. I don't, but 10% of people do. So that's a wonderful thing for me to just shut my mouth and take it because he's a pro. So that's just a little thing that's been kind of eating at me, but I probably should just let it go right away. But you know, if you're saying the cook knows more than you do, they're wrong. The cook doesn't have your taste buds.
Well, I absolutely believe, because I don't want to say I was a picky kid. I was a particular kid. The reason I'm going to say I'm not picky was that as a 6-year-old, I liked blue cheese and smoked mussels and okra. And what my mom said was that it was just very difficult to know to intuit ahead of time what I liked.
It's almost completely delicious apple now.
Yep, it's pretty much gone.
Everything
that
else
diesel is all blown off.
Yeah, only thing left is an apple, and it's not a tart one anymore.
There's something else in there too. There's like a minerally or earthy. I don't really know what to call it.
I tasted that earlier on. I'm not tasting it now. But
there's a little bit of something earthy in there. But I've gone back as an adult and basically revisited all the foods that I thought that I hated or didn't like as a kid. And there are only two things that I hated when I was a kid that I still can't stand now. Rye bread with caraway. Well, it's caraway seeds in particular, but caraway and other stuff doesn't bother me nearly as much as caraway and rye bread. I'm not sure why. It's some kind of flavor combination of the earthiness of rye bread and something in the licorice of the caraway seeds, I guess. And celery. Yeah. I cannot do celery.
I can eat celery, but I don't want it in any of them. I can eat celery stalks.
Right.
But I prefer to not taste it in foods. The only exception I can think of is if it's done really lightly in a, what the hell is it called? I just lost it. It's a New Orleans staple.
Oh, roux?
No, it's a sandwich. It's a round sandwich.
Oh, celery sandwich. Okay.
Yeah, it's part of its celery and. God, I hate getting old and losing words.
It's not a po' boy, is it?
No, a muffalata.
Muffalata, okay.
Now, if it's done right.
Nothing. What's a muffalata with you?
Right, exactly. If it's done right, then it should have more olive in it. And so the olive should overpower the celery.
Yeah,
and that's the one time that I'm like, oh man, I can taste celery, that it doesn't bother me because it goes really well with the olives and the other stuff that's in the spread that they put on top of it.
For me, celery is a perfect
4,000 calories on a plate, but what can you do?
The thing with celery for me is that I have textural issues and I have flavor issues. And I can overcome the textural issues if I like the flavor, and I can overcome the flavor issues if the texture's okay. And celery is a perfect storm of where I hate both of them together.
All right, I think we've talked this wine out, but let me see if our friends have added anybody got any questions, folks? Before we call it a day on this particular wine, I'm looking to see if it can show me questions. I just don't know the live thing.
No, we need to educate ourselves more.
That there are two people watching us. So hey, Angelica, how are you? Good to see you. And see, right? These are the two people. Well,
where'd they go?
I don't know, man. This is such a pain in my. Hell, where'd we go?
We are still figuring this live thing out.
We're better this week than last week. We're not sideways, and way better than the week before that. I hope, where you couldn't really understand a word we were saying, and the angle was terrible, so you were all looking up Will's nose. That was awesome. That was a high point in video live feeds.
Hey, at least we have an upward progression.
Indeed. We may have this thing down at this point.
Yeah.
I still want a better angle so you don't just see our heads. You don't need to see much more than us, but I thought it looked better when you could see us from the waist down.
The way I like to think about it is that, years from now, we have this down to a polished science, that we're going to look back on this is going to be really charming and quaint, and it's like looking back on what cell phone camera pictures looked like in 2008.
Well, this one's been much easier for me because I had my hair cut the day before yesterday, so I'm not like the hair isn't in my face.
Right.
I felt like I wanted to push it out or touch it. I don't know if any of you noticed, I dyed it kind of pink. I wanted a deep red. I got a bright pink. You know, but I can rock bright pink. I don't care.
You absolutely can.
I've had it before. Remember, we're not talking to this man in the pink hair.
Oh yeah, God.
We're not going into that story.
What's really funny though is that by and large, if people, even if they've seen you recently, it's one of those. Their mental image of you is purple hair.
Yeah.
Even if you don't currently have purple hair.
I had purple hair in over a year.
Right, exactly. Right. But if I mention the guy with the purple hair, they're like, "Oh yeah." Even if they have seen you within recent months and know better, or
I get this brassy thing that's driving me crazy. This is already not as bright pink as it was, and it's already turning brass. And I died yesterday, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
And I didn't want pink anyway, so if it gets brassy, then I'll dye it red, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Then I'll get a deeper brass.
What were you going for this time?
Red.
You're going for red.
You know, and pink is red, but not quite, as
Right,
Aerosmith says. It's like pink, but not quite. Or like red, but not quite. Pink.
In Red versus Blue, the guy has pink armor, and they're like, "Why is your armor pink?" He says, "It's not pink. It's a light red." They're like, "Yeah, there's a name for light red. It's called pink."
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. We appreciate you being here with us, and you guys have a great night.
Sláinte.